What's going on, everybody? Welcome into a trade stream. We get a trade stream this offseason. The Blazers pull off their first and likely only trade, and it's one that has been talked about for a while. The Blazers today acquire Larry Nance Jr. from the Cleveland Cavaliers, which is a guy I've been talking about pretty much all offseason as a playmaking big who can play some defense and knock down the three ball. I am very excited for this acquisition. I'll go into my thoughts on the trade. Hopefully Eric will be able to join us later. Eric did a solo stream earlier this morning on his own channel because for some reason he got locked out of this one. Today was the one day I slept in. Of course, the Blazers pull off a trade at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning. So the Blazers like to do things on a Friday, apparently. So I guess I should have been prepared. But regardless, I'm going to break down what I think about this trade, not just from the Blazers perspective, but I'll also talk about what I think of it from the Bulls perspective and the Cleveland Cavaliers perspective. The Cavaliers are acquiring Markkanen in this deal in a sign-in trade. Markkanen, of course, going from the Chicago Bulls to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Markkanen was the draft selection that was traded from the Timberwolves for Jimmy Butler, for that one-year rental of Jimmy Butler. Derrick Jones Jr. is going to the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls also get Portland's 2022 first-round pick. That is lottery protected through 2028. So a lot like the first-round pick we traded this past season, the 2021 first-round pick that we traded for Robert Covington, which was lottery protected through multiple future years. This pick is the same. Chicago's also getting a second-round pick from the Cleveland Cavaliers. I've seen that that's Denver's 2023 second-round pick, so who knows what that second-round pick... That second-round pick doesn't really matter. But, of course, I'll just start off from the Blazers' perspective. First off, if you haven't subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button below. This is the first stream in 8 days, which is probably the longest layoff I've had in maybe since I've ever started this channel, or at least since the pandemic started. So this was my week off, and we at least made it a week. It has been 8 days since I've streamed last, but yeah, of course, the week off, August 27th, we get a trade. A lot of people, want to trade CJ. That's not going to happen this offseason. As a secondary ancillary move, I really like this trade, and I'll get into the reasons why. What's up, all you guys I haven't seen in a while? Hope everybody's been good and enjoying the final days of your August. I am willing to take questions in chat, especially if you guys have any real questions you really want answered. You can always leave a little dono, because obviously I can't answer them all, but I will read every dono. #sellout. Eric is tending to some family matters at the moment. Nothing serious. He's just having to take care of something at the moment. So hopefully he will be able to hop on here as well. It's I don't know, man. Haven't streamed in 8 days, and going live solo is a different animal. But I'm excited. So let's just break this down. I've talked about Larry Nance Jr. on a previous video. Actually, multiple previous videos. What's funny is back when I collaborated with True Blazer Fan and did videos for him, I dropped a mailbag video, and I tweeted this out. If you don't follow me, at ToryJonesYT is the Twitter handle. That link is down in the description box below. I made a video talking about potential trade targets, and the first two guys I named were Rodney Hood and Larry Nance Jr. Of course, then we traded for Rodney Hood, and now we've traded for Larry Nance Jr. The third target in that video, for whatever reason, was Terry Rozier. So I guess he's next. I don't know. He's definitely not next. That man just got a bag this offseason. But Larry Nance Jr. is... Let me just say this. He is a better version of Aaron Gordon. You had a lot of people in Blazers media that wanted Aaron Gordon. They wanted to trade CJ McCollum for Aaron Gordon. They wanted to give up a ton for Aaron Gordon. And in my opinion, we just went out and traded a first-round pick as well as a fringe rotation player for a better version of Aaron Gordon, which is an absolute win. An absolute win. Shout out Caleb Pendergraph for the $5 dono. He says, love the trade for the Blazers and the Bulls. Don't get what the Cavs are thinking. Yeah, I don't get what the Cavs are thinking either. I will get into that later. He is a better version of Aaron Gordon. He is a better version of Aaron Gordon, in my opinion. He is a better defensive player than Aaron Gordon. Playmaking-wise, they're pretty similar. Shooting-wise, they're pretty similar. Larry Nance Jr. doesn't take a bunch of dumb mid-range shots like Aaron Gordon does. They're actually quite similar. They're both athletes. They're quite similar. I would rather have Larry Nance Jr. than Aaron Gordon. Okay? So, if your favorite media member really wanted Aaron Gordon, they should be absolutely thrilled. The past 2 years, or about 2 years ago, a lot of people were saying, the Blazers need a 3-and-D forward. We either have forwards that can shoot threes but don't play defense, or we have forwards that can play defense but don't shoot the three ball too well, like Maurice Harkless, Al-Farouq Aminu, etc. We went out and got the prototypical 3-and-D forward with Robert Covington, and then everybody was saying, oh, they need a playmaking four that can also defend and also hit the three. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like moving the goalposts. Well, despite the goalposts moving, Olshey still kicked it through the uprights with this one because Nance can play make, can defend, can knock down the three ball. I will pull up his stats for you guys, just so I don't get any of these wrong. Last season, he averaged 9 points per game, 7 rebounds, 3 assists per game. That was in 31 minutes per game. So he's not a guy that's going to go out and consistently give you 20. But we don't need a guy to go out and consistently give us 20. We need, we needed a backup four. And people were questioning why the Blazers didn't give the mid-level exception to Paul Millsap. Now we know why. Larry Nance Jr. last year shot 55% from two, which was down from 64% from two the previous season, so hopefully you can kind of get back towards that. 47% from the field in general, 36% from three. Last season he shot 35% from three. So if that truly is who he is as a shooter, then he's a guy that is at least an average shooter at the four spot. Slightly above average maybe. That was him shooting about 3 3-point attempts per game, making a little over 1 the past couple of years. Free throw percentage last year fell to 61%, but he's a career 69% free throw shooter. So in terms of being able to knock down the three ball, finish around the rim, he's athletic. And for his career, he's shot 58% from two. He's a pretty efficient player. Last year, his true shooting percentage was 56%, down from 61% the year before. But, of course, he was playing in Cleveland, which was just kind of a weird and crummy situation. Now he gets to Portland, where I think he fits in seamlessly. Per 36 minutes, for those of you who care, average 3.5 assists per game. And I'm just going to go into his playmaking first, after I think this last dono. Shout out Trevor Stewart, $2 dono. He says, can we have CJ run the bench and stack focus on D? CJ will start and likely stagger with Dame and run the bench. But Larry Nance Jr. can help with some of the facilitary stuff. He can bring the ball up. He can initiate offense. He can pass out of the short roll. He's a guy who can kind of help CJ and Simons, and he can be. He's probably going to be the second distributor with the bench unit because Simons really struggles in that area. So you have CJ, and I felt like the ideal backup four was a guy who could help the bench, just kind of run things, and a backup four that can pass the ball. Now this is a guy who you can plug and play with the starters. I think he fits really well, and he can help out the bench in that aspect, and he gives us, in my opinion, maybe the most underrated bench going into next year with Simons, with him, with Cody Zeller, who I think is really underrated, and with Nasir Little or Tony Snell as kind of our ninth guy. I think that's a very underrated bench going into next year. But I just like this because it's a guy that you can fit in a bunch of different lineups. If we're getting trapped in the playoffs and we want a playmaking four to exploit that, you can throw Larry Nance Jr. in there and he can be your playmaking four. You also got Yusuf Nurkic. You pair Nurkic and Nance together, and both those guys can playmake. So it's sort of a situation where I expect him to play some next to Dame and CJ, despite my expectation that Nance is going to come off the bench as the backup four. I expect him to be getting like 28, 29 minutes per game. He's going to play a ton. He's basically our sixth man. He's going to probably play more minutes than Melo, in my opinion, or at least he should. He's a much better player than Melo. Defensively, he's really, really good. He's underrated in that area. I think he ranked 4th in deflections per game or something like that last year. Both he and Robert Covington were in the top 10 in the league in terms of deflections. So that's another pairing that could be interesting. Rocco playing the 3, Nance playing the 4, where you have two guys that get their hands on a lot of passes. Two guys that cause a lot of deflections. And now that you have Chauncey Billups here in Portland, a guy who's pledged to play more aggressive defense, and I'm really curious to see what a lineup with Dame at point, Norm at the 2, Rocco at the 3, Nance at the 4, Nurkic at the 5, that lineup playing an aggressive defensive scheme could be very, very intriguing. So that's the thing is, like, you can slide Rocco down to the 3 and play Nance at the 4, and you have two forwards that were top 10 in the league last year in deflections. So it's a situation where this is a guy that you can use to accomplish a bunch of different things. You can use him as the playmaking 4. You can pair him with Rocco and have two great off-ball defenders at the 3 and 4. He can knock down the 3, so it's not a guy like a Ben Simmons who you have some question marks with, like, okay, when he's in the game with Dame, how's he going to play off of Dame? Nance can spot up and hit the 3 ball at a well enough clip that you have to respect it. 36% last year. You got to respect that. It was over 3 attempts per game. So I really like this acquisition because it makes the team better. I think there's only 2 teams that you could argue had a better offseason than us in the Western Conference, and one of those is questionable now at this point. Part of that is I believe Chauncey Billups is a huge upgrade over Terry Stotts, and everybody that's saying the Blazers didn't do anything in the offseason, they didn't get any better, it's a horrible offseason, they're not accounting for the fact that Chauncey Billups is a major upgrade over Terry Stotts. So, accounting for that, I think I wouldn't say necessarily had a good offseason because I was also kind of in the camp where I was hoping for us to trade CJ. Not necessarily for like a Ben Simmons, but I would have been down for Jeremy Grant because it would have cost far less. And that I really wanted Siakam, as a lot of you guys know. But outside of a CJ trade, I think this is about as good of an offseason as we could have asked for, right, chat? Like, we re-signed Norman Powell on a really good contract. I wrote this down somewhere. Let me find it. Hold on. Give me a second, chat. I'll answer your questions in a little bit after this whole dialogue. But I mean, if you account for Billups, who I think is going to be a really good coach, Norm re-signed on a really good contract. Nance is a great pickup, better version of Aaron Gordon. Zeller is a steal on a minimum contract. It's kind of crazy that we have our rotation right now, and we still have our mid-level exception. But Zeller is a steal on a minimum contract. And Greg Brown is looking like a steal with the 43rd pick in a draft where it was a loaded draft that we didn't have any picks going into it. And to be able to get a prospect like Greg Brown out of it, I mean, that's probably as good of an offseason as you could realistically ask for without trading CJ. So without trading CJ, from that perspective, I'm happy with the offseason. Now, if we traded CJ for a Pascal Siakam, this offseason would be getting A+ from me. But Siakam wasn't necessarily available. Daryl Morey wants a ton for Ben Simmons. If you want him, I mean, do you want to trade CJ and maybe Nurkic and like $5 million future firsts? Probably not. So considering the options on the table, I don't think the Olsha had a bad offseason by any means. by any means. Dame's coming back. We're playing under a good coach. I think this is a top 4 team in the West. I think they're probably the 4th place team in the West right now, which you'll take that. Maybe an upgrade at the deadline is possible and can catapult us, into the tier that the Suns, the Jazz, and the Lakers are in. Shout out play-by-play, $10 dono says, great move considering we had both Nasir and Derek Jones Jr., who are both small forwards. We need a backup four without a doubt. Last year, people said we had the most talented roster around Dame. Neil has upped that. And this is this is a very talented roster. I feel like people have forgotten the days of Al-Farouq Aminu and Maurice Harkless and how much people hated their offensive games and said, we need better defensive players. Well, you know what? I'll take the defensive pairing of Nance and Rocco over Harkless and Aminu. Any day. Any day of the week. But Rocco's a better shooter than both those guys are. And Nance is maybe a better shooter than both those guys are. A better ball handler, a better passer, a better finisher. And maybe not a better finisher than Harkless, but better finisher than Aminu. I mean, for upgrading the 2 forward spots, and the thing is like one of them's going to be coming off the bench, most likely. You got Norman Powell as one of the forward spots. I know a lot of people, he's a 2-guard. He's a 2-guard. I think he's lengthy enough to be able to handle the 3 against 9 out of 10 small forward starters. He might have some trouble against a Michael Porter Jr., but everybody has trouble against Michael Porter Jr. So, I mean, the way Olshey in the past 2 seasons has upgraded the forward spots, I feel like is underrated and overlooked. And you gotta give him credit for turning... I mean, Rodney Hood was looking great before his injury, too. That was something that kind of set the roster back a little bit when he got hurt and then came back and wasn't the same. But everybody used to complain about our forwards, and our forwards going into next year are Norman Powell, Robert Covington, and Larry Nance Jr. I mean, if you said that 2 years ago, a lot of the people that are hating on Neil Olshey now would have taken that in a heartbeat. Now, literally the only legitimate complaint in terms of the roster construction is you have CJ at the 2 and Norm at the 3. That's literally the only complaint. Because I don't see how you can complain about Zeller as the backup center. He's a guy that you'll be able to play in the playoffs and won't get absolutely abused like Enes Kanter did. Larry Nance Jr. as the backup 4 is one of the best backup 4s in the league. In my opinion, Larry Nance Jr. is a back-end top 100 player in the league. Ant, I think, will take a jump next year on the defensive end, hopefully with his facilitating, and I think Nas has a chance at breaking out, getting some minutes at the backup 3. I mean, I'm very excited for this roster going into next season, especially considering we have a better coach. So, leave your questions in chat. I will take your questions. No, Chris, Norm should not be our small ball center. But yeah, I think this is a top 4 team. I think I can't put them above the Lakers, even though I have serious questions about Westbrook's fit there. I think Lakers, Jazz, and Suns in some order are top 3. The Blazers are 4th. Trade CJ for Warren and McConnell. We don't need another 4. Unless it's a 4 that is like a star caliber 4. So for TJ Warren, I mean, I guess you're playing him at the 3. I don't really like... I like Rocco better at the 4. I like Nance better at the 4. Rocco and Nance can play together, but I also like Warren better at the 4, so I wouldn't really want Warren because you'd probably be playing him full-time at the 3. I like Warren better at the 4, though. But CJ trades ain't happening. Let's not talk CJ trades, man. I shouldn't have even responded to that. Are Rondae Hollis, Jefferson, and Harry Giles on the team? No. We still have to do one more signing. We still have to make one more signing. We have to have 14 players on the roster. Right now, we only have 13. I would prefer for it to be a backup center because Nurkic and Cody Zeller are both a bit injury prone, so you probably want a solid backup or a solid third string center that if you had to play him, you would be comfortable and wouldn't feel like he just messed things up. But overall, going from a Melo and Cantor power forward center pairing to Larry Nance Jr. and Cody Zeller, it might not seem like it's a huge upgrade. It's not as flashy. But in terms of how much they'll help the team, I think it's a major, major upgrade. The playoffs last year was so frustrating. We'd start off, I forget which game it was, but it's like, was it game 3? I don't know. There's a game we start off up 10, 6 minutes into the game. And I'm just like, okay, this is going good. Just please don't sub in Enes Kanter against Nikola Jokic. Whatever you do, Stotts, do not sub in Kanter against Nikola Jokic. And 5 minutes left in the first quarter, what do you know? Carmelo Anthony and Enes Kanter coming into the game. And then the Nuggets outscored us by like 15 points over the next 3 or 4 minutes. Do you guys remember that? If we had Larry Nance Jr. and Cody Zeller coming into the game, they don't go on that run. And we possibly win that game. We possibly win the series. Even with all the mistakes we made from a coaching standpoint in that series. How bad the offense was in that series. Everybody says, oh, our offense ranked really well in the regular season. Well, what did it do when it came time to try and win a game 6? We scored 20 points in the final 16 minutes at home against the Denver Nuggets, who aren't that great of a defense. Which is what I predicted all season long. Like, our offense will sputter in the playoffs. And overall, it did pretty well in the playoffs because Dame absolutely carried it. But that's what was messed up. Is like Dame had to absolutely go berserk in order for us to have a chance against a team that we were more talented than. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm thrilled to have Nance and Zeller as the backup front court after dealing with Melo and Cantor. Shout out to Ultra Noob, $5 dono. What can Bulls fans expect from Derrick Jones Jr.? Seems like he plays big for his size. And the Derrick Jones Jr. signing didn't exactly work out in Portland, but it wasn't necessarily Derrick Jones Jr.'s fault. It was, I mean, I'm kind of going back to it, was kind of Terry Stotts' fault. He just kind of got kicked out of the rotation when he was playing some of the best basketball of the season. Like, we traded for Norman Powell, and Derrick Jones Jr. got the short end of the stick in favor of a guy like a Carmelo Anthony, who I don't... Like, we didn't need more scoring. We needed more defense last year. We were the 29th ranked defense in the league. But I think his three-point percentage was like 33% before he got kicked out of the rotation, and then he struggled. Whenever he did play, he didn't really have a rhythm. But, I mean, he's just really, really good cutter. Really, really good finisher. Major transition threat. So I expect the Bulls to be a transition-oriented team, and I think that's why they wanted Derrick Jones Jr. back. Or, not back. I think that's why they wanted Derrick Jones Jr. You got Lonzo that can handle the ball, push and transition, play make. Same thing with DeMar DeRozan. Same thing with Zach LaVine. If you have a Derrick Jones Jr. as a lob target filling the lanes next to those guys, it works. Defensively, he's a guy that can defend on the ball, can defend off the ball. He's a good defensive player. The only problem I see with the Bulls potentially is like in the half court, if they're playing him next to DeRozan, that's two wings that don't shoot the three ball well. So how's it going to work if you have both those guys in the game at the same time? You probably would want to avoid that. That's kind of my one major question. But Vucevic can shoot the three, and Patrick Williams should be the starting four next year. I mean, I assume he is. So, I mean, it should be fine in a half-court setting. He's just not... Last year, we kind of just stuck him in the corner on a lot of sets and had him shoot spot-up threes. Despite him only shooting 31.6% from three, 45% of his field goal attempts were threes, which is ridiculous. Which is absolutely ridiculous for an athlete of his caliber and somebody that can finish as well as he does, who's not a good three-point shooter, to be shooting almost half of his field goal attempts from the three-point line is ridiculous. We kind of just stuck him in the corner in the half court and ran pick and roll up top or isolation up top with Dame and CJ. And then people were like, oh, why did we sign this guy? He can't shoot threes. Well, you got to run some motion offense, and you got to use him in a way where he's moving off the ball, where he's running off screens, setting screens for other people, slipping those screens. You have to use him as a mover in the half-court offense. My issue with Billy Donovan is he's kind of been a coach who's let the offense get stagnant. And when you have Levine and you have Vucevic and you have DeRozan, I feel like it could be a situation that Billy Donovan might do the same thing that Terry Stotts did and just kind of park Derrick Jones Jr. behind the arc, which is ridiculous. But, I mean, no offense to Bulls fans, I've never been a fan of Billy Donovan. Never been a fan of Billy Donovan. So, it'll be interesting to see. I'll watch a lot of Bulls games because they already were an intriguing team, but now I'm going to be looking for how they're utilizing Derrick Jones Jr. Hopefully that answered your question. Appreciate the dono. Yeah. As far as the Cavs side of this, let's talk about the Cavs side. Leave your questions in the chat. I'll try and go back through chat and answer some. But as far as the Cavs side of things, I don't understand what they're doing, man. Their front court, the only thing that makes sense is they're going to buy out Kevin Love, or they're just not going to play him. Because right now they have Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Lauri Markkanen, and Kevin Love at the 4 and 5. I don't know I think the plan long term is to start Markkanen at the 4 and Jared Allen at the 5. They give him $67 million over 4 years, which is $17 million a year. Probably a little bit of an overpay. He's a floor spacer, but he's not a good defensive player. And you have a backcourt of Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, so you can't really have a third defender who's a below-average defender next to those guys in the starting lineup. It's the reason that, I was intrigued by Lauri Markkanen, but I was intrigued for him to come off our bench. I would have never wanted to start Lauri Markkanen next to Dame and CJ. Because you just, with an undersized backcourt that's not the best defensively, you can't start a power forward who's a below-average defender and expect to be anything better than the 15th, 20th best defense in the entire league. So that's kind of my issue with them, is this doesn't help them defensively whatsoever. I would actually like Derrick Jones Jr. there in Cleveland. Better than maybe Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen's a much better player than Derrick Jones Jr., but I'm kind of just scratching my head as to what the long-term play is in Cleveland. I mean, the long-term play, I think, is Markkanen and Mobley at the 4 and 5. You try and package Jared Allen and Colin Sexton for something. Maybe that's a Bradley Beal package. Thing is, Bradley Beal isn't a good defender either, so I don't know. I don't know what the plan is there in Cleveland, but they're going to have to try and move some pieces around because this roster, as it's constructed right now, just doesn't make sense. Shout out my guy Connor, $10 dono, says, just sign Jared Allen to a 5-year deal and draft him Mobley. Why do they need Lauri? I mean, that's a great question, and that's the thing is they had to keep Allen. I'm cool with them re-signing him to a 5-year deal, $20 million a year. Might be a little steep price-wise, but I'm cool with it. Long-term, you move off him and start Mobley at the 5. I think right now you start Mobley at the 4. They might bring Mobley off the bench. I don't know, man. They might bring Mobley off the bench. I'm not sure. But but I wouldn't bring Mobley off the bench to start Lauri Markkanen. Like, if I was doing it, you're starting Mobley at the 4, hoping he can put on some strength. A couple years down the line, you move off Allen. You move Mobley to the 5, and then Markkanen steps in at the 4, potentially. Appreciate the $10 dono from Connor. I'm talking about these 3 guys, and you got Kevin Love, too. Like, I assume the plan is to buy him out, but I think trading for Nance kind of kills any chance that the Blazers would sign Kevin Love on the buyout market, and I wouldn't have really wanted him anyways. I would much rather have Nance than Kevin Love. Love is the bigger name, but it's not always about the bigger name. As far as the first-round pick price tag goes, Nance is worth a first. Derrick Jones Jr. is thrown into match salary. I told you guys that Derrick Jones Jr. needed to opt in so we could use his salary as a trade piece. You had other podcasts saying, no, you shouldn't opt in. We need to save money. And people that were frustrated when he opted in. And then other people telling me nobody's going to want Derrick Jones Jr. at $10 million a year. And then you had other people who write for Blazers Edge saying, I forget who it was, but Derrick Jones Jr. opting in shows how terrible of a contract it was. And a year before that, they were saying, I actually like this risk. I like this contract. A year later, it's, Derrick Jones Jr. opted in, terrible. Screw Olshey. What are they saying now that we use that salary to trade for Larry Nance Jr.? Is the first round pick an overpay? If they're saying that, and they wanted to trade CJ for Aaron Gordon, then they're just completely lost. Sledman says, bro, I swear you're on a kill streak predicting trades. You hit on the Powell trade too. Yeah, I hit the Powell trade. I called the Powell trade the morning of the trade deadline. But like a lot of it's just common sense because the Cavs had a logjam in the front court. I didn't expect them to trade Lance and replace him with another power forward, though. That's the part where it's just like weird to me. But it made sense because they have Mobley, they have Jared Allen, they have Kevin Love, they also have Larry Nance Jr. Like, there was rumors around Larry Nance Jr. He fit in for Derrick Jones Jr.'s salary. So Larry Nance Jr. made sense as a guy who could be available, and we needed a backup for him. We weren't signing a backup for. So that made me feel like if we're going to do a trade, it's going to be for a backup for, and Larry Nance Jr. made the most sense. And also, Neil Olshey has a history of making trades with the same teams, and we've made multiple deals with Cleveland in the past. I don't know if the front office is different. I don't really pay attention. They have Kobe Altman there. I don't know how long he's been there, but I mean, going back to the taking on Varishaw's contract for a first round pick, a late first, and then trading that late first up a year with Cleveland. We drafted Caleb Swanigan, so that didn't work out. But I mean, Rodney Hood. We got Rodney Hood from the Cavs. So Olshey likes to, I don't know if it's just coincidence or what, but he has a history of making trades with the same teams. Sacramento's another one of those teams. You look at Ariza, you look at the 2 second-round picks for Gary Trent Jr. So appreciate you recognizing that, though. I dropped a mid-tier trade targets video. I talked about Larry Nance Jr. too. I think it was like in that video it was him, Thad Young, Joe Ingles, and I can't remember the fourth one. But I like him. I think I like him better than Thad Young. If we had a stretch 5 off the bench, I probably would have preferred Thad Young, but having Cody Zeller off the bench, I would prefer Larry Nance Jr. next to him. We got a Denver fan causing chaos in chat. You guys should grade this trade. I'm going to create a poll. If you're you haven't been in our streams in the past couple of weeks, YouTube added a poll option, which will make it great for picks against the spread next year. I can only do 4 options, though. I wish I could do 5. So, grade. Alright, feel free to vote in that poll. Give me your grade on the Larry Nance Jr. trade. I would probably grade it a... in between an A- and a B+. That's Eric. Let's get Eric on. Alrighty. Let me get you set up here, Eric. Eric's just eating chips. I have him muted. He's just... what you eating, bro? Alright, I gotta do this a little differently. This isn't working how I wanted it to, so let me just minimize that and do it like... Sorry, my whole setup on the stream is a little scuffed at the moment. Let me... All right. There we go. We got Eric. All right. So, I haven't heard any of your thoughts on this trade whatsoever, Eric.
You didn't watch any of my stream earlier? Jeez.
I didn't have time. I didn't have time, man. I was sleeping. It was the one day I slept in today. Of course, they pull off a trade at 9 a.m. on a Friday morning. So, I don't know if you just want to say what your grade is for it, or you want to wait for that, or what. I don't know. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
I gave the both the Bulls and I gave the Bulls a B, us a B+, and the Cavaliers a D+/C-.
A D+. I could get on board with all of those. I can get on board with all those.
Yeah, the reason why it's only a B for the Bulls is because they basically turned, and I can't, it's a new GM as of a year ago, so I can't really be too hard on him. But, what's up, everyone? They basically turned Jimmy Butler into nothing because Markkanen was like the main part of that trade. Chris Dunn as well. All those guys have now moved on.
Wait, they got Zach Levine for Jimmy Butler.
Oh, Zach Levine, yeah, never mind. They got Levine still, yeah. My bad, forgot about that. But like having a 7th pick in that draft, I went through it earlier, but man, the 7th through like 12th picks are very, very bad, especially considering who went after that in the teens. Mm-hmm. But I just can't give someone an A for trading a 7th pick off a rookie contract and not being able to retain him or not, keeping them. You get a first out of it, I guess, but overall, it's fine, I guess. But yeah, Levine's a minor detail.
Very
but
minor.
For us, I don't think if you were just going to say you have to trade Derek Jones in a first, that's the only way to like get a better player. I don't think there are many players that would fit into that mold of a trade that are better than Larry Nance. So if you keep that in mind, that we just gave up a protected first and Derek Jones basically as an expiring contract, I think that's about as good of a trade as we could have done. And we're for sure better today than we were yesterday. So in my mind, B+. And I completely agree that with what you were saying about if you said you couldn't trade CJ and you had to do like a certain offseason, I think short of maybe lucking out and having one of those guys who we targeted join for the MLE, like say an Otto Porter Jr. maybe, or a Nick Batum or someone like that, if we could have managed that, I think that's the only way this offseason could have been better short of a CJ trade.
Yeah, I agree. Here, and we still have our MLE, man. I mean, what if we just got Otto Porter Jr. for the MLE and had him as our backup 3? That would have been the one better scenario. But like realistically, just I don't know. Like if you said we weren't trading CJ, then this was our offseason, I would have been happy with it. You know, for in the context of not trading CJ, which I wanted to flip CJ for a forward, but I mean, I don't know. That ship has sailed, and I've moved on.
Yeah.
I've moved on. So
overall, I think.
yeah. Overall, it's just a situation where like, they can still trade him at the deadline. People are saying, "Oh, we can't trade any of our future picks." You can go back and trade protections on this pick. With Cleveland, it seems like we have a pretty good rapport with Cleveland. We've done multiple trades in the past few years with them. You could go back and change protections and open up future firsts to trade. That is possible.
Yep. We did it with Cleveland before. I'm sure they'd be fine with doing it with us again. But that pick more than likely is going to convey. And if it doesn't convey, it either means we traded Dame or he got hurt. So, realistically, the fact that we protect it in a way where it only turns into a second in the future means that we protected ourselves against either injury or someone wanting out, and we would keep our pick in any scenario where we would not make the playoffs. So, I think that's... I don't really like tying up a pick for that much, but like you said, it's easy to get out of it if that were to become an issue.
Yep, 95% of people said it was an A or a B. So pretty good consensus. I haven't been on Twitter really a ton. I've tweeted out a bunch, but I haven't really scrolled Twitter a ton. I haven't really seen the reaction from the fan base. But it seems like this is the type of move that everybody would be on board with.
You would be surprised. The whole anti-Olshey crew was out in full force. Oh, another 6'7" guy. Neil can't sign anyone or trade for anyone.
They wanted Aaron freaking Gordon, dude. Oh my god, man.
Yeah, a lot of this. Oh, okay, trade, but it's not going to move the needle or make Dame want to stay anymore or anything like that. But.
Bro, here's the situation we're in. I would be shocked. Dame isn't the type of person to ask out in the middle of the season, right? If he's going to ask out, I highly doubt it's going to be in the middle of the season. He's not going to quit on the team in the middle of the season. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to have a good year next year. I think we're we're the fourth best team in the West. I think Chauncey's going to do wonders. There's a chance. I'm just going to go out on a limb. There's a chance we're like the Utah Jazz from last year, and we are a 1 or a 2 seed. We have the roster capable of doing that, and now I think we have the coach capable of helping us improve. I wouldn't be shocked if we win 55 games. This roster is that talented. So I think the season is going to go well. If we falter in the playoffs, sure, Dame could start the offseason asking out, but I think it will be a situation where, like, if we falter again in the playoffs under a new coach, I think Olshey gets fired, the new GM comes in, and just pursues the heck out of a CJ trade for a star. And at that point, we would have all our future firsts. Because we made the playoffs as 2022 first conveys. We have all our future firsts. Hopefully, Anthony has a bit of a breakout season. He'll be a free agent. Hopefully, Nas has a breakout season. Because he'll be a trade piece that we can throw in. And then we have all our future firsts on top of CJ. Hopefully, CJ has a good season. Like, that would be the last-ditch effort at, like, kind of keeping Dame. Mm-hmm. Right? So, that's kind of how... Like, that's kind of the... I don't know. That's kind of the worst case scenario, barring like something shocking where for some reason we can't win in the regular season, which we tied for 5th last year under Terry Stotts with CJ and Nurkic missing a bunch of games, and now the roster's better. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't see where the downside is on this trade. And sure, it's not the CJ trade everybody's expecting, or not expecting. It's not the CJ trade that a lot of people want, but this team's going to be good next year. And if it still can't figure things out, I still think we'll have a chance going into next offseason to trade CJ and keep Dame.
Yeah. It'll be a lot tougher if we lose in the first round, but overall I agree with you. I'm on the record as saying that Dame will be completely revitalized this year. Just having a fresh approach, having a slightly better team, just doing things differently, preparing in a different way, being held accountable. I think he will be okay with that. He'll accept the challenge. I just think this year is going to refocus him on what made him want to say all the comments about wanting to stay and be loyal. And Rick Bucher had a great answer to this yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, Tori, but
I saw it. Or I saw it paraphrased.
He basically said, like, there's nowhere Dame can go because we're not trading him to the Lakers. They don't have anything to trade us, right? And he doesn't have a no trade clause, so he can't like force his way anywhere. I mean, he could try or say he's sitting out or something. But for the most part, whatever team we traded, let's say we traded him to Philadelphia for Ben Simmons. Just say that stupid scenario played out, right? Mm-hmm. Well, they're not guaranteed to win a championship. They probably still aren't even the favorites to come out of the East next year if we traded him to Philadelphia right now. So his whole brand has been built around loyalty and being the man in Portland and, leading his team and not being the guy who wants out or runs from the grind and all that stuff. So if he does that and goes to a team like Philly and they lose in the second round or the first round, he's going to get crushed. And it's much better off for him. He's going to realize that maybe it wasn't so bad in Portland. And unless he wins a championship and is a key contributor on it, he's not going to get full credit for the championship. Yes, he'll have won a ring, but people are going to accuse him of ring chasing when he always said he was against that and all that stuff. And I think there is some truth to that. When Dame really sits down and thinks about who he is as a person, he's not that type of person. And I am not worried about him leaving because of that. And I just think once he sees how much different things are, I think it's going to change things. Now, if the Blazers decide that they don't want to move forward with him, that might be his way of getting out of here or whatever. But I just don't see that happening. Like you said, they would fire Olshey, I think, before it came to that. So I'm not as worried as other people. And hearing him say what he said in the Complex interview, where he basically echoed that, saying, the grass isn't always greener, and that's something I have to think about. I just think this year under a new coach, he's just going to be so much more different and happier, and he's going to realize how good this roster is. And to your point about it being a top 4 in the West, I said this earlier, I truly believe we're going to come out of the gates better than we have ever since Aldridge left. I think we will be right up there with Utah and Phoenix. I think we'll be better than one of those two teams at least. I think our schedule favors us early in the season. I
It
feel
does.
like we have
I
continuity.
don't. Are you? I don't. I don't.
Well,
I don't
we
agree
have
with
a lot
it
of home
favoring
games.
us. We have a lot of home games, but it's a lot of tough games, and we have 6 back-to-backs in November.
Yeah, but I feel like we're gonna hit the ground running. Everyone's
Very
saying,
possible.
"Oh, last year you got to give them 20 games with the Roko, and they're learning a new defense," which they weren't learning. But like this year, I don't feel like we're gonna be like around 520 games in like we normally are. We're not gonna fall below 500 at any point, like we seem to always do. I feel like we're going to hit the ground running. The starting lineup is going to be locked in. They're going to have already played together and implementing better changes and having better game plans and having a lot of home games and having other teams have the opposite where they have to factor in new players. And we have 3 key injuries to Kawhi. Klay Thompson isn't back till Christmas, they're saying. And Jamal Murray's not going to be back till sometime next year. So I think that puts us in a better situation than all 3 of those teams who, if fully healthy, would probably be ahead of us. So I think there is a real opportunity to jump out in the West early, and come trade deadline time or All-Star time, we're fighting for home court advantage or second or third seed versus, play-in situation or making the playoffs at all.
Yeah. Yep. It'll be... Here's the thing. If we come out of the gates hot and winning games, we'll be winning games against good teams. Now, with the way the pandemic is, I would have preferred to play more road games at the start of the year and more home games at the back of the year. Assuming that the pandemic is going to be better and, not as problematic in March as it is in October or November. So that's kind of something with the schedule that I don't really like. I don't really like having a ton of home games early, but it also could set us up for success, so maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. But it's a lot of tough teams. So that's the thing. If we're able to come out of the gates hot, winning a bunch of games against tough teams, that'll set us up to have potentially like a 55-60 win season.
Yeah.
60 wins is a bit overzealous, but you just look at what Utah did last year. They were a middle of the pack playoff team, first round exit, didn't really change anything, and were the number 1 seed. So this team has a serious chance at doing that this season. This is the first season where I'm going in believing that we have a chance to be the 1 seed, and it's a small chance. But if you said that about the Jazz last year, people would have said you were crazy, and then the Jazz went out and got the 1 seed. I think this is the first year where I'm like, there's a little bit of a chance that we might be able to be good enough to be the 1 seed in the regular season. Because I think Chauncey's going to be great, and I think this roster is set up for a lot of regular season success. And I believe they're set up to be dangerous in the postseason. So,
Well, to all the people saying West is stacked, there's no way we're better than all these other teams, they all got better, all that crap that we've debunked several times on this show.
Is somebody saying that in chat?
Yeah.
Who got better? It's just I want to ask them who got better.
So, I think the Lakers, as long as most of their team stays healthy, I think they're pretty solidly going to be the 1 seed. I think they're a regular season team. I don't like their players postseason time, especially if either LeBron or AD isn't 100%. But regular season wise, I feel like they're going to be tough they could just sleepwalk through some games. But
I feel like you got to account for Anthony Davis is always hurt.
Yeah, well, I don't like to put injuries in that, but you have Westbrook.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's why I'm saying there's a chance. That's why I kind of like to tier them, because the Lakers were 7th last year. If LeBron misses time, I think they are a fringe playoff team without LeBron.
Yeah.
LeBron could also take a step back. Who knows how all those role players fit? Who knows how long it takes for them to build chemistry with so many new pieces? Who knows how Westbrook fits? It's hard to predict the Lakers next season. Let me take the 2 donos, and then I'll let you kind of get back to what you were saying, because these Greg Hughes $5 dono. Appreciate it, Gray. Says if CJ plays like he did at the start of last season, nobody will be talking about trading him. I don't necessarily agree with that, because if he plays like he did at the start of last season, people will say, oh, he should have a ton of trade value. Let's go get insert top 10 player here.
Yeah.
Like, that'll be the conversation. Appreciate the $5 dono. Andrew Miller, $10 dono. What's up, Andrew? Says, do you guys think we have to go to the Western Conference Finals now, at least take that team to the brink? Or will something less or more than that be considered a Billups success?
See, I don't like to put parameters on it like Western Conference Finals or bust. I mean, obviously, we made it to Western Conference Finals and we're playing a better brand of basketball. I just don't want to. I don't want to be in a situation where we lose simply because of coaching, and I feel like that has cost us seasons. Whether it be you want to say it's cost us like the series against Denver or the series against New Orleans, which Stotts was completely outmatched and didn't do anything in those series. Or if you want to say, like, the series against the Lakers, there's no way Stotts could have won that. Well, there's no way that team should have been the 8th seed either. So they should have been better during the regular season. So I feel like I just want to see, from a scheme point of view, from a game plan point of view, not losing because we don't have a good defensive scheme and not losing because we don't move the ball on offense. So if we lose because our team simply isn't good enough, like we have to play the Lakers in round 2 and they just have more firepower than us, and I don't think that's going to be like, oh, it's a failure of a season because Billups couldn't get us to the Western Conference Finals. So I just want to see them be a team that's prepared for the playoffs and maximizes the talent on the roster and uses the players that in a way that brings out the best in them. And I don't feel like they've done that in the last few years.
Yep. So,
well, real quick. So,
yeah,
back to my point. These people who are saying these things about how the West got better, if the Utah Jazz today traded for Larry Nance Jr., if they would have traded like Derek Favors for Larry Nance Jr., these same people would all be in our chat right now saying, look how much better Utah, we can't even get Larry Nance Jr. They're so much better than us now that they got him, you know, and we get him, and it's like, nah, it's not going to help us. Like, what?
Man, everyone else, Suns got JaVale McGee. Look at that.
Utah got Rudy Gay, we only got Larry Nance, so like, we're so lame.
Who was the person in chat saying, oh, a lot of other teams got better? Who was that?
There was like 3 of them.
Okay, can those 3 people say which teams they think in the West improved more than we did if you include coaching? Please tell me. Right now, Eric, I said there was only 2 teams that you could put ahead of us. Right now, there might only be 1 team that you could put ahead of us. It might have gone from 2 to 1. Might have gone from 2 to 1. And I went into a lot of the reasons before bringing you on. Like, people won't look at going from Melo and Kanter to Nance and Zeller as a big upgrade, but it absolutely is. Especially, like, defensively, that's such a monumental upgrade. Offensively, I think it's pretty comparable. 2 different types of players. Like, Melo is a much better scorer than... I wouldn't say necessarily a much better scorer. He is a better scorer than Nance, but... I mean, Nance can hit the 3. Nance is athletic. Nance can cut, move off the ball, etc. But Nance, passing-wise, at the 4, better than Melo. Like, Zeller, offensively, is a bit underrated going into this season. I mean, offensively, I think those 2 front courts are comparable. Defensively, I don't think they're in the same universe. Zeller's a good defender. Not necessarily a good rim protector, but like every other area of defense he's good at.
Yep.
And then Nance is a great defender, in my opinion. Maybe not great on the ball. He's a lot like Rocco.
Yeah.
Defensively, in my opinion.
The way I like to say it is, again, last year, the year before, when you don't have good personnel, you have to play aggressive, you have to be smart, and you have to have good schemes. And our schemes were crap, and our personnel was crap, and those 2 mix never works out. Whereas this year, we still might not have the good like on-ball perimeter defenders, and we lose Derek Jones, like who's probably our best one at that. But overall, Zeller, Snell, Norm, Nurk, I think is like this. Rocco is definitely like this. All these guys are great, smart defenders within the scheme of a good concept, within a good game plan. They can execute that game plan effectively. They don't need 50 games to learn how to run a zone defense, or like people tried to say last year. Like these guys are all smart and know how to play defense. So you don't have to worry about them being out of position too often. You don't have to worry about them breaking down within the scheme of your defense and having them be the reason why like someone gets an open three or something like that. And just having players like that makes a huge difference. Like I don't think it's possible to be bad at defense if you have good schemes combined with players who are smart on defense. Even if they're lousy one-on-one perimeter defenders, I think they'll be fine in that situation.
Yeah. I'm still just looking at chat, waiting for the 3 people that were complaining about other teams improving. I'm still waiting to see what teams improved more than us in the West outside of LA. Well, I mean, Golden State is maybe the only other team you can make an argument for. The Suns got JaVale McGee and Landry Shamet and lost Torrey Craig. They didn't get better than us. Or, I should phrase that differently. They didn't improve more than us. Utah didn't improve more than us. They got Hassan Whiteside. If we got him, people would be freaking out at O'Shea. Hassan Whiteside.
But he didn't even choose us.
Yeah, who did the Clippers add? Justice Winslow?
Did you see that article?
Yeah, they got an A because he looked like an all-stars rookie. Bro, he looks like he's ready for the big 3. He's overweight. It was horrible and is hurt all the time. Like, that's the one guy they added, and they don't have Kawhi next year. They improved more than us? No. Denver, who did they add? They lost Paul Millsap and added Jeff Green to replace him, and lost JaVale McGee. Like, I don't think they improved.
And two, I mean, even if you think Jeff Green is better than any of our signings, which I mean, I guess you can make the argument. He's still going to play behind JaMychal Green, Aaron Gordon, and Michael Porter Jr. So there's not a whole lot of minutes for those guys. So
yeah, and Definitive says, but most teams in the West didn't have to improve to be better than us. We have to catch up to them, not the other way around. That is not the discussion. That is not what I'm replying to. I'm not discussing that. I'm discussing people that complain about other teams improving and us not. When we've improved more than pretty much any team in the West, if you account coaching, and now that we've done this trade. Mm-hmm. Like, that is the conversation. In terms of us having to catch teams, we were tied for 5th last season. And one of the teams ahead of us won't have their best player. So, I mean, we caught the Clippers. We were right there with the Nuggets. Or we were right there with the Mavericks. We were right there with the Lakers last year. Sure, they were hurt, but we were hurt in the regular season. Sure, you can look at playoffs, but we all know how badly we all know how much Stotts sucked in the postseason. It's what I've been talking about for years, Definitive. So if we're just talking about roster construction, like, I think we were already right there with Denver going into the series. I still believe that we were the more talented team last season in the playoffs. We were more talented than Denver. I will never switch up on that. Us losing doesn't mean that we weren't more talented. Who was our head coach? Mm-hmm. Now, I understand if people think Stotts was a great coach, why they would see us losing and say, oh, well, since Stotts is a great coach, we must automatically have a worse roster. I understand how they would process that, but, I mean, I literally predicted how the playoffs could go all season long with our offense sputtering when the pressure ratchets up in the playoffs and when teams can be a little bit more physical. Now, people say, oh, well, we were like the number one offense in the playoffs last season. That's only because Dame had to go nuclear. Go absolutely nuclear. But it lost us game 6. I said, we're not going to be able to guard. I said, run and drop scheme isn't going to work against even a guy like Monte Morris who crushed us. The next series against the Suns, dude didn't do anything. Right? The Melo Cantor pairing cannot work in the playoffs. What happened? It absolutely got eviscerated. So there were so many factors going into that. It was still a 6-game series. It was still a series that, shoot, CJ doesn't step out of bounds. Maybe we win the series. Like, we're talking about a game of inches here. So it's not like, oh, we have to make up all this ground to catch up to teams in terms of our roster. I don't buy that. The only rosters that I think are more talented than us going into next season is Phoenix and the Lakers. I wouldn't even put the Jazz above us in terms of talent. The Jazz are a really well-coached team. I would put us at the same plane as the Jazz. I don't even know if I'd put any other teams on that plane going into next year in terms of roster talent. Now that's, of course, accounting for the Clippers missing Kawhi and the Nuggets missing Jamal Murray.
Yep. People, okay. First of all, for whoever's saying Memphis got way better,
who'd they add?
Steven Adams is worse than Valanciunas, and if you think otherwise, that explains your opinion on why you think they got better.
That's not even debatable.
I mean, they got. If they would have kept Bledsoe, I guess maybe, but then they traded him for Beverly, and then they trade Beverly for
Jarrett Culver and Juan Hernan-Gomez.
Yeah, players who probably won't factor in that much to their success this season. I mean, they're just taking flyers on young players, you know. I mean, they got
traded Grayson Allen, who played well for them last season, and they got Sam Merrill back.
They got the 10th pick, but I mean, who knows how much Zaire is going to be ready to play this year. It's just, I don't know. I don't think they got any better.
I don't know. Whoever said Memphis has to make their case in chat. Because I don't see how they got better either. Like, the only swing there is, like, Jaren Jackson Jr. being healthy. But I could say, oh, well, Nurkic being properly utilized, he's going to be a lot better next year. You know what I mean? Like, there's always, like, little factors within the roster. If we're just looking at the talent of the roster and who teams will have next year,
yeah,
I don't know. Memphis, if anything, they downgraded. Yeah. If anything, they downgraded. They went from Valanciunas to Steven Adams, and mediocre role players who, in the playoffs, likely won't play. And they traded away Grayson Allen, who was starting for them in the playoffs last year, and actually played decent for them. And they got Zaire Williams, who's probably not ready to play right away. I like Zaire Williams as a prospect, but he's a long-term guy. So yeah, I don't see how. I see, like, people will make people. Here's what's frustrating.
Another team that they got Nance would be like, oh, what a move by Memphis! They're so awesome.
Well, it's just like when the people that don't like Olshey, any move any other team in the West makes, they will stretch into it being some sort of monumental upgrade, where if we made the same move, they downplay it.
I mean, they did that with Hassan Whiteside, of all people. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, like, dude. Yeah, I mean, people were talking about, oh, the Suns got JaVale McGee. But then the Nuggets lost him. Yeah, oh, JaVale McGee, if he's that good, man, then the Nuggets definitely didn't get better. Oh, but the Nuggets, he doesn't matter for the Nuggets. They got Jeff Green. But okay, they gave up Paul Millsap. You know, they replaced Paul Millsap with Jeff Green and lose JaVale McGee. Like, it's just people trying to stretch the situation to fit their own narratives because their narrative is Olshey bad. And they will try and stretch the truth or stretch reality in order to try and fit around that. So you'll have people say Memphis got better. They traded Valanciunas for Steven Adams. So they got better. But then they'll also say the Pelicans got better. They traded Steven Adams for Valanciunas. And then they got Devontae Graham for Lonzo Ball, dude. Major upgrade, Eric. I mean,
I think both of those teams are overrated, but
it's just so silly. Like, I don't get it.
Let's get to some more donos.
Yeah.
RT Shaggy Squid with this round $5 dono. So the restrictions on the first prevent us from using other firsts in a CJ trade at the deadline, right? I love that we got Nance Jr., but damn.
You can rework protections on a pick.
I think he must have missed that part where you talked about that right before his dono. But if that's what you're concerned about versus the trade, would you have rather traded like an unprotected first? So if we lose Dame, like we owe them a potential lottery pick? Like, I don't understand. It's just, it doesn't make sense. And like Tori said, you can easily call them up and offer him cash for a second round pick to reduce the protections or change it so it changes into a different thing so we can trade future picks.
Or you can trade a first 2 years after that pick conveys. Yeah. Like, if we're obviously going to make the playoffs and that pick's obviously going to convey, we could basically trade a 2024 first, wording it as the first will be conveyed to the team we're trading it to 2 years after the pick we owe Cleveland conveys. Yeah. So there's ways to work around it so you're trading future picks. Yeah. You just can't trade a 2023 first no matter what because you can't trade picks in back-to-back years. So you can't trade a 2023 first, which is why it would be 2 years after.
And let's just say we're talking about...
Hold on. He says, could have got the deal done for multiple seconds to CJ Ellaby. No, we couldn't have.
What? Come on, man.
You're just making you're just making stuff up. To what multiple seconds do we have? We don't have. We have a 2022 second and a 2027, 2028. Like, but dude, they're not trading Larry Nance Jr. for 2 seconds in CJ Ellaby. Nobody values CJ Ellaby.
There was a rumor that the Bulls would not have traded Markkanen for anything short of a first anyway, and that's who got the first. And
exactly. Exactly.
And the Cavs only dealt him for a first. They wanted more for him, but they wanted Markkanen for some reason.
But yeah, so they wanted Markkanen, and Chicago wanted a first for Markkanen, and not 2 seconds. So that's what I don't like is like just making stuff up, saying like, oh, we could have just given up 2 seconds in Ellaby for Nance. Like, no, we couldn't have. It doesn't make logical sense. There's nothing to base that on.
And here's the deal, too. We have so much better tradable assets now. Norm's contract. Let's say CJ's having a killer year and Norm's struggling to fit in at the 3, and we decide to keep CJ. I know no one wants to think about that scenario. But Norm would have good trade value at the deadline. His contract is great, and he's locked up long-term. Like, that's going to be an attractive asset for teams. Now, Larry Nance is a mid-level, a $10 million contract that is a very retradable if we wanted to include that. Or you package him with a Rocco, and maybe you can get someone much better than Rocco and Larry Nance and upgrade that way without even having to trade CJ or something. There's so many more ways. Nurk and Rocco, both very tradable contracts. Now that they're on their last year of their deal or whatever, and then you have guys like Ant and Nas. If those guys show anything this year, they have potential, even if they don't, to where they could still have some value in a trade. So there's so much more. Like last year, we're talking about trying to attach assets to Hood to get rid of them. It's like this year we have so much better options, and so even if it's we lost out on attaching like 3 firsts to CJ to try and get someone, I still don't think that was going to happen anyway. So I don't know why you would fuss over that when it probably wasn't even a scenario that's going to happen.
like, you could trade Larry Nance Jr. to a third team at the deadline and get back a first-round pick from them that you could use in a deadline trade.
Right.
Like, there's no reason to trip about giving up a first-round pick for Larry Nance Jr. See, this is what I just don't understand. The people that criticize Olshey, it's like, oh, he needs to trade these draft picks for people that can help Dame win now, and then we do it, and it's like, oh no, we don't have any draft, like, or the protections on this pick are bad, like, or something. It's just, I don't understand. Like, we made the team better. That's what we needed to do. Like, sure, it's not satisfactory for some people because they wanted CJ gone. But you can work around the pick protections. Mm-hmm. Having Larry Nance Jr. makes it so that you can trade one of Larry Nance Jr. or Robert Covington at the deadline and get back assets for him. It's like, if you trade Robert Covington at the deadline, who replaces him? Nas? Derrick Jones Jr.? No, now you have Larry Nance Jr. to replace him. If we end up moving him, if a team really wants him and is willing to give up 2 first-round picks for him. Like, there's no reason to trip about the pick. There's no reason at all.
I'll be back in a sec.
Yep, I'll thank the other 2 donos. Thank you, Play-by-Play $10 dono. He says, I think people are underestimating the impact Chauncey can have. If what he's been preaching is true, we should get at least close to reaching the maximum potential that this roster has. And I see people saying, oh, you don't know anything about Chauncey. You don't know how he coaches. Yeah, yada, yada, yada. Just listening to him, I trust in him. Absolutely trust in him. Everything he's been saying is everything I've been saying for years. And everything I've been saying for years, in terms of Stotts as a coach, has played out pretty much to the T. All last season, I said, our style of basketball won't translate to the playoffs. And people were saying, oh, well, look at this team. Look how they're finishing the regular season. Look how good they're looking. And I said, we're not beating high-quality teams, and even if we are, or even if we were, it doesn't matter. Our style of play doesn't work in the playoffs. What happens in the playoffs, we lose to a team we were more talented than, and everybody thought we were more talented than. Our style of play didn't translate to the playoffs. The way we guarded Jokic was not smart. We didn't switch up looks against Jokic. We ran drop scheme against our guards. Our defensive guys, in terms of their help side positioning, in terms of their positioning off ball, it was terrible. We were helping 15 feet off our individual assignments when we were 1 pass away from the ball. And we were leaving 1 pass away to go dig at the ball, giving up wide open kick-out passes to a guy like Austin Rivers. And then people say, oh, Austin Rivers went off against CJ. The whole team did not know how to position, did not know how to rotate, didn't run different defensive schemes. Sure, the roster wasn't great defensively, but it was much more than that. We shouldn't have been as bad as we were. And that's what Olshey means by saying our roster wasn't responsible for being 29th, because we shouldn't have been 29th. There was worse defensive rosters in the league than ours. We were 29th because, I mean, yeah, if we had better defenders, we would have been 29th, but Terry Stotts did not know how to coach the defensive end of the floor. There's no way you could tell me that guy knew how to coach defense. We ran drop scheme or switch all season long and didn't adjust, and then gave Jokic one single look all series long. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Our offense was good in the playoffs. Previous 5 years or so, our offense would be like top 5, top 8 in the regular season, and then it would be like 12th out of 16 playoff teams in the playoffs. It would decline. Now, we were first last year despite losing in terms of offensive rating. That's because Dame carried us. What happened in the final 16 minutes of Game 6? We scored 20 points. That's the only way that's possible is if you're running a trash offense. With the amount of talent we had on the floor, with how bad Denver's defense was, the only way we were going to score only 20 points in 16 minutes is if we were doing something wrong ourselves. And if you go back and watch that 16 minutes, tell us what we're running. Chauncey has said everything I've wanted to hear. I am extremely confident in everything he said. Okay? He will at least be an upgrade. You could argue how much of an upgrade, but I have no doubts whatsoever that he will at least be an upgrade of some sort. So if people say, "Oh, he's up here," you don't know what he is. You don't know. I've heard him talk. I've heard him talk about how he plans on coaching. I've heard him say what needs to be fixed, and I agree with it. So I'm confident in him. You don't have to be as confident as I am in him, but I feel like me and Eric, we've had a pretty good pulse on the coaching of this team, and I'm very confident going into next season under Chauncey. And I think anybody that's questioning my confidence will see in the long run why I was so confident.
Yep, I agree. The only thing I'm slightly worried about or hesitant to say 100% Billups is the man is sometimes you can want to or know the right things to do, but getting the players to buy in. But I don't think we'll have any problems with Dame and CJ and those kind of players buying in. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. But there is a chance that someone as smart as Billups still has trouble teaching what he knows and the way he wants to play to his players. But just the little clips they've shown of him coaching makes me not think that's even going to be a possibility. So I'm stoked about it.
Yeah, I mean, like there's been nothing to dissuade me from my confidence. You know what I mean? Like everything I've seen has just made me more confident in him.
Yeah.
Shout out Tyrus McBrooks, $2 donor says, "Hey guys, how good defensively will we be this year?" I think that's what that dono message was saying. Appreciate it, Tyrus. Goal should be 10th ranked defense. Try and get into the top 10. At least top half of the league. This roster is good enough to be the 12th, 13th ranked defense if they're well coached too. If they're 12th or 13th defensively and top 3 offensively, you have a team that could be a top 3 seed in the regular season.
Yep. And before this trade, I thought they could easily be the 15th or somewhere around 15th, middle of the pack. Now with this trade, adding another quality defender and some, a true power forward to that bench unit, I think we'll be in that 10 to 12 range at worst if the schemes are correct and if Billups implements everything he's going to say. So, and I mentioned this last year, we were further away from 28th than 28th was from 12th. So it's not, as long as you're respectable on defense, it's not that hard to go from the mid 20s to the early teens. It's just when you're as bad as we were, it's just so bad. But to all the people saying we need to get better, we won 42 games out of 72 last year. It's not like we were completely awful.
We're tied for 5th.
Yeah, and so
and that was with CJ and Nurkic missing time, and that was with Terry Stoss as our coach.
And that translates to roughly 47, 48 wins if my math off the top of my head is correct, right? So that's over a full season with the roster last year and with worse coaching, in our opinion.
And we also only had Norman Powell for part of the season. We
only
didn't
had
have him the whole year.
20-some games at the end of the season? And now they're used to playing with each other. Nurk missed, and it was hurt for a while, and then came back and then missed. He wasn't playing in back-to-backs and missed a few games. So, yeah, I mean, that's easily a 50-win team with better coaching and the same roster they ended the season with, in my opinion. So I don't think we're that far off from being right there with those teams without making any moves. And then you add guys like Zeller, Nance, Snell, all these quality players at not much of a cost, in my opinion. I think, like I said, that combined with the fact that some of these other teams are going to have some growth to be had, learning to play with each other. If you want to say these teams made major moves and everyone else is getting better, well, then you also have to factor in that those teams will take time to mesh, and we should have continuity from playing with the same roster. And like I said, I think we are going to jump on that at the beginning of the season and not look back at any point. So I've truly believe that's how the season's going to go. I've always felt that the roster wasn't the problem. I did want to see, a huge trade that would have been awesome, but I am also kind of excited to see be either proven right or wrong with just how much coaching has mattered the last couple of years, and just how much this roster is being undervalued.
Yep. It's funny because there's an article talking about why every contender should hunt for Kyle Anderson, because defense plus passing is the easiest archetype of high-value ceiling raisers, right? And here's the thing, a lot of bullshit critics will, talk all fancy like that, just defense plus passing in a power forward is just the perfect archetype to raise the ceiling. And I quote tweeted that. This is the 24th of August. I said, Larry Nance Jr. Larry Nance Jr. Okay, question for chat. Who would you rather have, Kyle Anderson or Larry Nance Jr.? Because a lot of people were saying we should go after Kyle Anderson. Maybe I'll do a poll. I'll do a poll. Who would you rather have, Eric?
I've never been a slow-mo fan, so I'd probably say Nance. But it's pretty close in my opinion. They both have their. Anderson's a little better on-ball defender, probably a little better ball handler, but Nance is a better all-around player in my opinion, better help defender. Yeah, so.
I can trust. See, here's the thing: I can trust Nance's shot a lot more than I can trust Kyle Anderson's shot.
Yeah, is that an outlier
that's the
last year?
Yeah, that's the reason why I would rather have Nance. Kyle Anderson shot 36% from three last season, but the 2 years prior to that shot 26.5% and 28%. I don't know. I don't know if he's a 36%er now or if it was an outlier season and he's more around 25 to 30%. Larry Nance Jr. the past 2 seasons has shot at least 35%. His three-point percentage has gradually improved in a way that I think it makes sense. He was 34% 3 years ago. 2 years ago was 35%. Last year was 36%. So 34, 35, 36%. I will put more trust in that than a guy that shot 26, 28, 36%.
For sure.
So I trust Nance's shot better. That's the difference maker for me, because I trust him to be better playing off of a Nurkic or off of a Damian Lillard or off of a CJ McCollum. I also think he's a better cutter and he's obviously a better lob target. So I think he's a better off-ball player.
So I talked about this earlier on my solo stream, but Billups talked about making Nurkic more of a scorer too, right? And one way to do that when you have a big-bodied center like Nurkic is having a good high-post passer. And we talked about in the past, bringing in a Blake Griffin or someone like that, that would have probably meshed well with a Nurk. But Nance is that kind of guy where you can put him at the high post, throw him the ball, have Nurkic seal down low, and have him dump it off to him. Or Nance could even put it on the floor and get Nurkic's guy to commit to him and lob it up to him or whatever. And you play a big man game like that. And then if defenses have to account for that, then you have Rocco, CJ, Norm, Dame all spotting up in the corners or off ball, 3-point shots. So 2 of those 4 guys will always be in the game spotting up for 3, or even Snell, who shot 57% from 3 last year. You got McLemore off the bench, who's a good shooter. Simons is a good 3-point shooter. So you have all the shooting now too, and now you have Zeller, you have Nurk, and you have Nance, and all 3 of those guys can play in the high post and run an offense through them and set up others for points. And we talked about this all last year. People would say, "Oh, Dame can't run off the ball. There's no one who can make a simple pass to him when he's open." And now you have no excuses because you have 3 guys who are all good to solid passers for their position, and you can run an offense through them. And with the way Dame and Norm and CJ in particular are shooting on spot up 3-point shots, that's going to open up a whole layer that if Billups can open that up and get our offense to flow in that way, what do you take away? Because if you don't help off like the two bigs who are able to pass to each other and run a two-man game, then they're going to score most of the time. And if you do help off them, that leaves the shooter open. And all three of those guys can pass out to that open three all day. So this is something that's going to unlock the offense. And I feel like Dame and CJ and Norm in particular are going to get easier shots because of it. And Nurkic is also going to get easier shots and become more of a scorer because of it as well.
Yep. Just overall, this is a guy that you can fit in just different roles. You know what I mean? That's just really why I like it, is you can use him in so many different ways. I like that, because especially with a coach that seems like he's going to be willing to throw out different things offensively and different things defensively, to be able to have kind of a Swiss Army knife backup four is very ideal for that. In that, you know, everything you've just talked about is kind of an example of how having a Larry Nance Jr., a guy that can do a bunch of different things, a guy that can pass the ball, can play make, is going to be valuable on this roster next season.
Yeah, for sure. And to the person who said that Norm didn't shoot well last year, so small sample size, under stats, he did not shoot as well as he is capable of. But prior to the trade, we're talking about one of, if not the most efficient scorers in the NBA last year. So as from a guard position, and so like to think that he's not capable of matching what he did prior in all the years prior to coming here, I think is a little biased towards a small sample size. And I think he's going to be much more comfortable now that his contract situation's settled. He knows where he's going to be playing this year. He knows his role a lot better, and Billups will have a much better offense for him, I think. So I'm not worried about him at all.
Yep. Any other areas or things you want to talk about in regards to this trade?
No, I'm stoked. I feel like we're better than we were yesterday, and that's all you can hope for when you make trades.
Yeah.
And it's coming from someone I don't really like to give up first, but when you look at Olshey doesn't like to trade draft picks, and then so now he's traded 3 firsts for Rocco and Nance. I'll take that all day. Those are good. That's good value in trades, in my opinion. Gave up expired contracts for them. I'm just stoked that we got someone on as good of a contract like Nance for Derek Jones. I think this is better than just running it back with Jones. But I do feel kind of bad for the way he was unceremoniously kicked in the groin for doing nothing wrong last year, in my opinion. But you got to use those contracts to your advantage, and now Olshey's done it 2 years in a row, so I like it.
Yep. I don't know. It's like their narrative dies in regards to, Olshey needs to stop drafting small guards and use the draft picks to get a forward that can help Dame win now. And it's like the last 3 firsts we traded for Rocco and Nance. That narrative is gone. Mm-hmm. But now it's like, he won't trade CJ. He'll never trade his guys, despite the fact that he traded his draft pick in Gary Trent Jr. last year for Norman Powell, who could have been a half-year rental. And
let Collins walk, who he gave up 2 firsts for, and was his main guy who he said was a foundational piece, who only didn't have a chance to prove that either way because of injury, and he still gave up on him too. So, yeah, I think all those narratives, anyone who's still holding on to that kind of crap is just trying to be unfair because they don't like him.
Yeah, quit buying the anti-Olshey narratives. Like, I'm not saying he's a good GM or anything, but there's so many narratives to disparage him that are just completely whack and made up and ridiculous. I mean, you had somebody in, I forget who it was, earlier. Oh, he could have traded Ellaby in seconds instead. Like, just don't make stuff up.
Yeah.
Don't make up reasons to criticize him. Just try and be fair. I've been critical of him in the past. I was critical of him when we signed Derrick Jones Jr. But just try and be logical. Like, there's no reason not to be. Just, that's the only thing I have to say in regards to that. You got too many people and too many media members out there, too many people with platforms that it's like their sole purpose of covering the team is to disparage Neil Olshey.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, and people would have said that about us with Stotts, but trust us, the content this year is going to be phenomenal. Not everything we do is based on talking about why Stotts struggles as a coach, because we try to know the CBA. We try to follow the rest of the league. We try and learn about the game of basketball each and every day. Like, it's not just about criticizing one person. It never was. That's the problem with a lot of other people, though. It's all about criticizing Neil Olshey, and they will try and fit their narratives around it. Don't buy in too deeply into that.
Yeah, I got into this earlier because someone asked me, like, how long will you give Billups to, like, show you whether he's a good coach or not? And so I got into, like, how I watch the game. I watch the game differently than people, and I think that's why people thought we were so negative, or thought we didn't know what we're talking about, or when we first started criticizing Stotts and everyone else is like, what, Stotts is a great coach, how could you even say that, you know? Well, we just watch the game differently. We don't just see like, oh, we won, or like, oh, we didn't have CJ this game and we beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, you know, like, oh wow, what a great coaching job, you know. That's not how we watch the game. So we actually like watch for like what our schemes are, what we're doing differently. If something's not working, do we change it? And I think under a good coach, you're going to notice that right away, game one versus the Kings. If De'Aaron Fox is going off and has like 24 points at halftime, we're not going to run out the same drop scheme on him in the second half. I feel like we're going to do something different, like a good coach would do that. So if Billups doesn't do that, he just keeps letting De'Aaron Fox do whatever he wants in that scenario, and we lose the game because of it, or like make it a much closer game than it should have, then I'm going to be on game one saying like that was a bad coaching job. We shouldn't have just let him do whatever. So
I mean, it's easy. You just watch basketball and watch what they're doing.
Yeah.
And actually like try and learn about the game so you know how to analyze what they're doing. It's literally that simple. And that's what I go into games doing. I watch basketball, and I will watch what they're doing as a team. And like have like I've played, so that has helped me be able to recognize certain stuff. Not saying you have to have played to recognize certain stuff, but it does help. I can recognize stuff that's happening out there on the court. Mm-hmm. Or I can recognize stuff that should be happening out there on the court that isn't. And I will talk about that. It's literally that simple. It's not about chasing a narrative or pursuing a narrative or trying to stretch things to fit a narrative. It's literally, I'll just watch basketball and then talk about basketball.
Yeah.
It's so simple.
It's stuff like if Dame starts scoring and they start double teaming at half court, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we don't like start running them off ball a few plays, or if we're just running pick and roll right into the traps constantly over and over the whole second half, and don't like try to switch up how we're running the offense because and try to capitalize or attack the 4-on-3 advantage that causes, then that's how I watch the game. It's like, what are we doing? Like, I'll be sitting there like my notes, like, why are we running this play when they're trapping Dame right into it, you know? And it has nothing to do with who the coach is. It has to do with how I watch the game. And then the thing that does have to do with the coach is how they fix that, because we're going to see different styles. Billups is going to be thrown into situations that he's probably never seen before, and how he reacts to those is going to be crucial to how good of a coach he is. And I can tell you what, nothing can be worse than the way Stotts reacted, because he didn't react at all to those situations. We're still running the same freaking plays that got shut down by New Orleans in the playoffs, you know? And we still run the offense the same way. We still run the defense the exact same way we did throughout the whole stretch of time. So I know for a fact that Stotts did nothing to fix those situations or to make adjustments or do anything. And if he did, he didn't give them enough chance to play out or develop or work on them enough throughout the season so you were prepared in the playoffs. So I'm just excited to have a season where I'm watching stuff and the players are seemingly doing the right thing on the court, and we can then have a conversation on whether the roster is good enough, knowing that the players are put in the best position.
Yep. And here's the thing. You can't make the excuse, we don't have a playmaking 4. We got a playmaking 5, a good passing 5, and a playmaking 4. You can't make excuses of that anymore. I think that Larry Nance will, in the playoffs, if teams are really trying to trap Dame, I think Larry Nance will finish a lot of games in place of Rocco and will just be used as the outlet out of the trap.
Yeah, he's good at the short roll, which everyone always talks about Aaron Gordon,
But, like, also, it's like our floor setup behind the trap, I think, will be better under Chauncey than it was under Stotts because the way we set up the floor when Dame was getting trapped was really, really bad and didn't really give us a chance to exploit it. The only way we were running a two guard front against the trap. A lot of people might not know what a 2-guard front is. It's basically CJ McCollum is across the court, Dame's on one side, CJ McCollum's. Even with Dame on the other side of the court, you can run a 2-guard front if you're running your pick and roll around the 3-point line, where if you swing to CJ, he has an open 3, but you cannot run a 2-guard front to beat the trap when you're getting trapped at half court and CJ McCollum is the outlet across the court 40 feet away from the rim because his guy can just sag onto the roll man. But then people would blame the roll man not being a good enough playmaker when he's not even an outlet option out of the trap. And it was stuff like that drove me crazy. So I think the floor balance will be better. I don't think Chauncey's going to run Dame into traps at half court and then run a 2-guard front with the other guard being at half court too. And then you also have a playmaking 4 who, if Dame is getting trapped in the playoffs, he's a guy that you can utilize as the outlet man to create things and make things happen. Which is the reason everybody wanted Aaron Gordon. And Nance is a similar caliber passer, in my opinion, to Aaron Gordon. So, there you go.
And on the other side, when we trap, they give up open shots every time. It's just...
Yep.
Which won't happen either if you're doing it right. So,
yep. Shout out to Funkmaster General $6 dono. I think $6 that's a first. Appreciate the $6 dono. Says looking at Nurkic and Norm to have a breakout year with a coach they actually respect, and Nurkic is the X factor next year. I think I can talk about more. I can talk about him more on future streams in September because we'll need content for September because it'll kind of be a dead area of the year. So a lot of season preview stuff will come in September. I don't want to go too far into it, but I think Nurkic will have a big year. So I agree with you on that.
Yep, and everything he has said since the season ended, that guy hated Stotts. And he just seems so much happier now. I mean, I know he was sad Derrick Jones got traded today, but that guy seems so much happier to have a new coach and one who respects him and wants to utilize his skills versus is always like blaming him for what's happening and all that stuff. So I think Nurk's going to be so much different attitude-wise and just not having those lulls in his game this year.
Yep. Anything else you want to cover with this one?
No, thank you everyone for tuning in. And a special shout out to those who watched both this stream and my stream this morning.
Yeah, shout out to if you were there for Eric's stream this morning. You did that on your personal account. The password changed to this account a while ago, but it's been so long since you've done a stream on this account, I didn't realize. Yeah, and I'm at the point where I was like completely plugged off because during the off season I had my ringtone up and just my phone loud. So if you call me, all right, I'll wake up. It got to the point in the off season where I just had it silent except for my alarm. So yeah, I woke up. I saw Jared was the first thing I saw. he tagged me in the Discord and said "bang" in all caps. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, wait, we make a trade? Took me like a good minute to find it, but yeah, so shout out to everybody who's tagged me and stuff and whatnot. I couldn't fall asleep last night. My hours have been better because you guys give me a lot of crap for my hours. I've been waking up at 11 a.m. and some people be like 11 a.m. and you think that's good. I mean, my work hours are kind of like 11 to 3 and then like 5:30 to 9:30. That's kind of like the best times for me to work. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, waking up 11 is fine. Don't hate on me. Chill. But this was like the one day I slept in. And of course, they pull off a trade at 9 a.m. So, Eric.
You had your phone muted.
Yeah, and I had my phone muted. So, that's what happened this morning. So, Eric had the solo stream on his channel because he was locked out of his account too. But here's your guys' trade stream.
I was about to go for a walk with my dog, and I got a text from Reese, so shout out to him for alerting me. And then, I was panicked trying to get a hold of you, and then I got my stuff all set up and was going to go live, and then it said password incorrect or whatever. I'm like, what do I do? I'm like, how do I go on Facebook Live or like Twitter Live or whatever? And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to post the link to the Uprise channel. It probably would have blown up if we had more
yeah. Oh well.
Our normal audience, but yeah.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff this year to try and build the platform. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not tripping about it. Appreciate you guys showing the support. This was our 1 week off of the season, and I mean it's been a week since we've streamed. It's nice to be back. I guess we'll be live again next week. We will have streams Mondays, Thursdays, as usual, on our second channel, Blazers Uprise Live. Link is in the top of the description box below, so if you don't want to miss our streams in September, make sure you go subscribe to Blazers Uprise Live by clicking that link. Other than that, video content coming in September. Schedule breakdown needs to come soon. I've just been putting it off. But, I mean, it's not like it has to be released by any sort of time. I put in a lot of work on that, which you guys will see. If you guys are familiar with my schedule breakdowns in the past, you guys kind of know what's coming. But that, at some point, hopefully this weekend, will be coming out. Once I just decide to sit down and videotape that. Other than that, follow us on Twitter. Twitter links in the description box below. And I think that's all the plugs. Did I miss a plug?
No, I think you got it.
Yep. So we'll be live again next week on Blazers Uprise Live. Hopefully, you've enjoyed your week off without us. But we'll be live again next week. Hopefully we can catch you then. We will talk maybe more about Larry Nance Jr. On that stream on Monday and take more of your guys' questions. Until then, have a good rest of your weekend. It's nice that the Blazers pulled off a trade. Larry Nance Jr. is a guy I've wanted for a while now, and he's the perfect backup 4, in my opinion. So, a good day for Blazers fans, to say the least. Eric, anything you want to finish off with?
Nope. My laptop battery's at like 2%, so perfect timing.
Perfect timing. All right. We will catch you guys on Monday over on that second channel. Until then, have a good rest of your weekend. Until next time, as always, peace out.